about how we're going to do Thanksgiving this year that we've never had before. So fun times. Anyway, today we're gonna enjoy just a little bit of a conversation. I've got up and coming artist Joel Vaughn. I think it's fair to call him that. He's young. He looks young to me. So he's got a new album out there. It is called Louder Than Lies. That's what it looks like right there. So if you're looking for Joel Vaughn, Louder Than Lies, that's what you're looking for right there. We'll listen to a little bit of music here at the end of this conversation. But Joel is with me live, and we're going to talk about music and life and COVID and not touring and just whatever comes out of his mouth today. So Joel, good to have you here.
Dude, thank you so much for having me.
So give us a little bit of background. I know you're from the great city, the crossroads of Amarillo, Texas, now living in Nashville. Of course, that's where all musicians go to succeed or fail. A little of both. You know that's true.
Hopefully succeed.
Yeah, well, no, hey man, I think you're on the right track. So tell us a little bit of your background so we'll understand some of the music.
Yeah, so I'm not a native Texan. I have to add that disclaimer, but I got there as fast as I could.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know, right? My dad was in the Air Force, so we moved around a lot. He retired in 1994, and at that point we moved back to Alabama, where my parents are actually from. They were born and raised there, and we stayed there in that area, the Southeast, up until the year 2000, and that's when I started picking up guitar. I started singing in church when I was 7, and that was way back in 1993. And so I picked up guitar. I know, way back, right?
Yeah, I remember it well.
So anyway, I started playing guitar in 2000, and then my parents let me know we're moving to Texas, and I was like absolutely opposed to moving to Texas. Did not want to go there. Didn't want anything to do with it. I knew that there weren't trees. And then we got to Texas. We moved to Waxahachie, Texas, which
bad.
I'm sure you know. It's not too far away from you guys are.
Yeah.
It really wasn't that bad. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, what was I complaining about? There's trees here. There's normal people. I was 14 and I was being dramatic. Get there, it's really not that bad. Met a lot of friends that I'm still connected with today. That's when I first started playing in the youth group. But we only lived there for 6 months before my dad said, by the way, I'm feeling called to being a full-time pastor at a church again, and we're going to go check out this church in this little town called Dimmitt, Texas. That was 6 months later. Dimmitt, Texas was everything I was afraid of when we moved away from Alabama. We get there, there's literally nothing. There's no trees, there's no hills. There weren't even windmills back then. Like, this is 2001, and it's just flat desert. And the biggest thing that this town was known for was getting hit by an F5 tornado.
Yeah.
So, you know, like, everything in me was just like, yeah, let's go. Not really. So we moved to Dimmitt, and we kind of moved around a little bit before we settled in Clarendon, Texas, and that's where I met my wife.
Wow.
Go ahead.
No, I just know Clarendon's as a couple of stoplights.
Yeah, exactly.
On 287,
that's
right?
really all that's there. Yeah, her dad was a farmer, and he was a huge fan of me. No, I'm just kidding. No, I met my wife when I was in high school. We got together and led worship for a lock-in that First Baptist Church Clarendon was throwing, where her dad was doing youth. He wasn't the official youth pastor, but out there, it's such a small town. You just had, parents and people chip in.
Right.
So we did the worship for this lock-in, and that's when I was like, okay, all of my plans are thrown out the door. I want to marry this girl. I didn't know it then, but like I had an almost full ride scholarship to this school in Missouri, and I met her, and that was like out the window. So after we met, I left for a little while because my parents left that job and went back to Waxahachie. Started in Waxahachie in Texas, ended up back in Waxahachie. And I moved back to Clarendon to go to junior college. And instead of going to a full university with scholarship, I was like, I'll go to this junior college because my wife was still, we weren't married yet, obviously. I was waiting on her to graduate from high school kind of thing. So I was like, I'll work hard and that sort of thing. And so I went to junior college, waited on her, and she graduated high school. We both went to the school in Canyon, which is West Texas A&M University. And that's where we really started digging in and leading worship together. We led for this ecumenical group of students, about 300 to 500 students every Thursday night, once a week during the semester. And that was kind of where I was asked to be like put up front and lead. And those were different times. We were doing like 10 to, I remember a set list being 16 songs long and going, why are we doing this? This is torture. Like, it's so much fun, but could we cut it to like half that? No, so we led worship together, her, my brother, and I, and with another group of students that went to college there. And after that, I took my first job at 20 years old. We got married in 2006, and we were 20. We were very young. And I took my first job as a worship leader there. And that's when people started kind of hearing about us and started asking us to come out and lead worship for their events. We would go to, New Mexico, Oklahoma, sometimes Colorado, Southern Colorado, and just kind of all over Texas. We would do these, what were called Disciple Now events and youth camps and stuff like that. So we stayed busy when I wasn't working at a church. Fast forward a little bit, I'm working at a very large church in Amarillo. And basically in my dream job, when I decided, or when I not even really decided, I just felt like the Lord was tugging at my heart, like that I needed to take a step back from leading worship on a platform. Because as I said earlier, I've been singing on stage since 1993, like 7 years old. Remember walking up to the deacon and handing him my cassette tape, my little tape, and it was a song called My Place Is With You. And I remember that. And so like, I couldn't really distinguish like between my identity in Christ so much as this is who I am. I'm the singer, I'm the worship leader, performer, whatever you want to call me. I was saved at a very early age. I was 6 years old. It was 1992 in Amory, Mississippi, just off away from Columbus Air Force Base, where my dad was stationed. And by 14, when I started playing guitar, I had rededicated my life and wanted to make sure that decision that I had made when I was 6 was valid. And so I determined it was, but I'd kind of strayed away and had used music for a really long time to just kind of put a wall between me and other people. And so here I was, 20 years old, leading worship on staff at a church of, I don't know how many thousands of people. At the time, probably about 12 or 14,000 members.
What do you mind saying what church?
Yeah, I don't mind at all. It was Amarillo South Church. We merged with another church called Hillside Christian Church.
Yeah, okay.
And so very large church out there. I was one of 9 staff members, and I had some things in my life, some sin in my life, and also just like I couldn't really identify who I was what I was doing. And I didn't want people to get in. I didn't want people to know that there was pain going on in here and in here. And who would question the guy, who's up on stage leading worship every single week at a big church? That guy has to have it all together. And I didn't really want anyone to get in. And then my daughter was born in 2011, and that's when everything changed for me. Yeah, I held her in my hands, looked at her, and the night she was born, her little eyes popped open. I know she couldn't see me, but when her eyes popped open, I was just like, whoa, this just became real, Yeah, like I'm responsible for this life, and I get to be a dad, but I just felt like something was missing. And so I resigned from my job as a worship pastor, and I took some time off. It ended up being 18 months. And by the time I stepped back onto the platform to lead worship again, it felt like a really sweet and amazing time. But I didn't know that I was called to still work in a church in that capacity. And so 2013 rolls around, and I decided to, I felt the Lord pulling and calling me to write songs. I've been writing songs a little bit more. I've been writing songs since I was, a kid, really more professionally since I was 18, 19 years old. But really to take those songs and use them to minister to people, I didn't really do that and heed to that call until 2013. And I remember being asked to come into the office I can't remember what day it was. I think it was a Thursday. It was Thursday. It was a Thursday afternoon in February of 2013. And they asked me if I felt called to be a songwriter, if I felt called to be a worship leader. And I told them both, like that I want to be obedient to whatever God has called me to do. And it just wasn't going to make sense for me to be able to do that there. So I was just like, all right, I guess I'm stepping out on my own. And I'd like to say the rest is history, but it's still kind of being written.
Yeah, it is, and that's a big step too. I mean, you got a wife and a daughter at that point, and so, like you said, you're responsible. So that's a big thing. Here's my question for you, and for those of you jumping in late, we're talking to Joel Vaughn. This is his latest recording, "Louder Than Lies," and you know, for a 20-year-old who's grown up doing a thing, in your case, music, to say, you know what, my identity is not in that. It's not in being the guitar player, the musician, the guy on stage. It's something bigger than that in Christ. A lot of people go through their entire lives and never get to that realization. So the fact that something happened to you at 20 is actually pretty significant, and I think speaks really to everybody, no matter what age you are. But I can imagine that it speaks really loud to a lot of 20-somethings today who are struggling with identity. Was there anything in particular, or what was going on that made you say, you know what, I need to realign some things in my life, because that's significant.
Yeah. So for me, it was it was really more of this. I moved around a whole lot. Like Nashville was my 40th move when I moved from Amarillo, and most of those moves happened before I was 20 years old. So we went across the country just traveling all the time. And so I had some past hurt from that. I never got to be able to get to know, I never had a, quote unquote, best friend as a kid. I only got to know people this long before it was time to move on, kind of thing. And that was ingrained in me. And so like I developed some sin patterns and some habits and some things because I always knew once things got too hot, once things got too tough or too hard, I would just move on. I remember listening to this comedian. I was actually running yesterday. I run a lot now. Actually, I've been running a lot for the past 10 years, but I was listening to this comedian and he was joking about how when something, he's like, I grew up in a home where we always rented. We never bought anything. He's like, so the whole deal when you rent is if something breaks, you don't fix it. You just move on. And when the lease is done, you go to another house kind of thing. Like the toilet's messed up. Oh, I guess we're moving in 3 months instead of fixing it, And that's kind of how I approached my life. This is broken. This isn't working. I don't know how to repair this, so I'm just going to move from here to here. And I felt like that cycle and that pattern, I didn't feel like it. It was very apparent to me that pattern was very cyclical in my life. And I was like, I want to be known by God. And I felt like I wasn't just doing that to people, but I was doing that in my relationship with God.
Yeah.
When things got tough, I would turn to food addictions and things like that. Today, at one point I was 104 pounds lighter after a year of dieting and working out when I started addressing all these issues. Now I'm about 85, 90 pounds lighter because I'm 34 now and life catches up with you. It doesn't even matter how hard you run. By the way, teenagers, just remember that you can diet all you want and run as hard as you want. It's still going to catch up with you.
Yeah. Oh, buddy, just wait till you hit 50. A good time. Okay. So, what was there anything in particular that you did to kind of reset your identity, to break the habits, to let some people in? I mean, what did you have to go through personally, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically to break those patterns? Because again, doing that at a young age is huge, and there are people that go through their whole lives and never address issues like that.
I definitely didn't do it on my own. Luckily, the church that I was at was very gracious to me. They gave me a job working in IT, and so instead of like going out and getting a job elsewhere, I worked on computers all day long, for 18 months straight, and just was a normal guy. Like when I went to the store, it wasn't people approaching me and telling me, "Oh, you sounded so good on stage this morning," and stuff like that. That all stopped. Like all of that ended. So I didn't realize how good that was for me to just, be who I was. So I had an accountability team that surrounded me and made sure that I was in the Word, all the time. And one of my very good friends, Keith Davis, he was like, "We're going to work on Ephesians 1, and you're going to memorize the first chapter." And at one point, I could recite the whole thing like back to him, and so we were like focused on memorizing scripture and that sort of thing. I don't even know why we went through that, but the reason he chose Ephesians 1 is because he wanted me to realize that I was loved and I was chosen and I was adopted, that I had citizenship in heaven, and all of those things, those good things about who God says I am, that, I honestly was pretty sick of myself, and I didn't feel like I was deserving or like I could be loved in that way. I had a pretty strained relationship with my father. And so at that point, I put all of my stock into my talent. And it was really hard to develop a relationship with a heavenly father when I have all of this beef at this time with my earthly father. And it took some time. So that, coupled with being in counseling like the whole time, and it was messy. It wasn't something that like I just walked into a counseling session and three sessions and I'm good. No, this is like 18 months of just addressing this kind of stuff, because I remember when I was 14 years old, we had just moved to Waxahachie, and then my parents said, "No, we're moving to Dimmitt." And I was angry about that. I was angry because I was just constant, like I could never get to know anyone. And then they allowed me to go to youth camp that summer. And I'm standing at the back of the room, ironically, like later gifted to lead worship, but I'm standing at the back of the room, hands in my pockets, staring up at the stage, just being so frustrated and so sad. Like I had made all these friends and I'm going to get to see them for not even 7 days, 5 days at youth camp. And I'm going to have to go back to this literal desert. Dimmitt is a desert.
Yeah, it is. I've been there.
And so a guy walks up to me. I've never seen him since. Don't know his name, nothing. He walks up to me, puts his hand on my shoulder, and he had tears in his eyes. He's like, "I don't mean to bug you, but the Lord led me to come tell you this, that everything's going to be okay and that you're going to do great things in his name." And I was just like, who are you, kind of thing, staring at him. But he had tears in his eyes and they were just rolling down his face. And he's like, "That's all I wanted to say." And he patted me on the back and then he walked away, and I noticed he was looking at me. And that stuck with me for such a long time. And when I held my daughter, I had that memory, and I was like, am I stepping into the calling that I'm supposed to be stepping into? Am I even ready? Am I trying to lead people out of a place where I'm not even going myself? Like, am I leading out of an empty well, if you will? And I found for a very long time that because I just avoided it, that like I was just drawing from an empty well and really just relying on the scriptures that were in songs rather than the scriptures themselves. You could ask me, what scripture did that song come from? And I'd be like, give me a second, that sort of thing. And so, it was a lot of things, I guess, to answer your original question.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, what taking the time to do those things, there's someone, I can forget the name of the author, but we have someone that's been on our program, and they call that soul care, which is really what it is. What did that do for you that set you up for the last, however many years it's been, decade or so?
Yeah, it's been 10 years really since that journey started. It set me up in a way that, like, I remember, because I was just so ashamed of myself that I would just eat my feelings. I was 128 pounds, soaking wet. I could do push-ups underneath the door when I was in high school, and then I get to college. I think, getting married is going to fix this and that and the other. And, yeah, it doesn't. It just makes things even more interesting, right?
Right, right.
And so I gained 100 pounds in a matter of like 3 years.
Wow.
Um, and so like, yeah, I kind of lost track, but yeah, I gained
Um,
100 pounds. Go
so,
ahead.
but going through that, not only did that lead you and put you in a position where you could manage your eating and your health, and because
Yep.
I look at you and I would have never thought, right? But
Right.
what else? What did that just? Here's what I'm driving at. For someone who's relating, going, yeah, I kind of move on from things, or hide from my problems, or don't let people in, or I've got these hidden things in my life that I don't want anybody to know about, because none of us do. We're all ashamed of them.
Right.
You breaking from your identity as the musician, taking the time to humble yourself and go to people, get the counseling, and just own up to all the garbage in your life. What has that process then set you up to be 10 years later?
It set me up to do exactly what I'm doing now. It was not comfortable.
Right.
I'll say that. It was like, you always hear "step into the light, step in the light. It's better here." Yeah, like it sure seems that way when you've been in a hole. You're basically a spiritual agoraphobic, if that makes sense at all.
Sure.
And so like you see the light, and you're like, kind of thing. But also, it's not just that. It's also everyone can see you. Everyone knows your problems. It's all out for the world to know. And suddenly, what you realize is that sounded scary at first, and it was. It was terrifying. And not to say there wasn't any negative backlash with that, but all of a sudden, the stress of it all is just gone. You're like, I am before man. I am before my Creator. I have nothing to hide.
Yeah, that's what people need to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a great thing. Okay, so jump forward. Let's talk a little bit of music, and I appreciate you being open and sharing all that, because people need to hear that. We need to know that. And you're right. It's not fun admitting to things. I mean, I've been there. It's hard, but you're also right in that when that burden goes away, oh my gosh, you never thought it could be that good, having to go through that kind of pain, because it is painful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really appreciate you being open and sharing, because people need to know that. Let's jump forward. How's Nashville? It's a lot prettier than West Texas. I'll just give you that.
Yeah, it's a lot prettier. Like it's partly cloudy skies right now. I'm sitting by my window.
There's no dust creeping through the
There's
windowsill.
no dust. No, like I mean, I don't even remember the last time I dusted it, and it's amazing. But the thing I will concede to Texas is this. Well, West Texas, because the Dallas area, it's still really green. It's pretty. It has trees, but the Texas Panhandle, virtual desert.
Mm-hmm.
But what I will say is the Mexican food east of the Mississippi River.
Yeah,
Sad, man.
Yeah, it is. I know. You're 100% right. Yeah, and it's really good out in West Texas. But
oh man, it's really
so
good.
talk a little bit about the music though, because is this your first album?
No, no, actually,
I didn't think so. Yeah.
This is it. I've had a lot of independent releases up to this point. So my first album, if you will, was I don't even really count this one usually. Is in 2007 when I was still 20 years old, going on 21, and I pressed some CDs at my home. But my first official release was in 2008, an album called Bigger Than Me, and I think I had 2 more releases after that before I signed my first record deal in 2016. It was sent to me in 2015. 2016, I signed it. We were more focused on what's called the pop CHR scene. Mm-hmm. I released a bunch of songs that got on a TV show, or not the TV show, but the internet version of the show called Dude Perfect. Had 3 or 4 songs do that. So,
Now is this the EDM stuff? Because I read that you did some
Yep.
EDM stuff, which you got to explain that to people, because I think Christian and EDM don't typically go together.
No. No, I met a friend in 2014. His brother was at that time charting on Christian radio, and I had opened for him at a concert. And then I was like, I kind of want to do some music that's a little different than what I had, had been doing the past 10 years.
Just a
And
little.
so we wrote this stuff. Yeah, just a little. We didn't really write this stuff with the intention of releasing it as a Christian artist. It was more of like, this is going to be some cool stuff to like be thrown on like TV shows and stuff like that, like sports stuff. And it did. It just so happened my first record deal was signed when I had that music. So of course it was marketed in that direction too. And so I was like, man, I kind of got off on the wrong foot on that. I didn't want people to think I was the EDM guy. I was actually doing a radio interview with a radio station in Australia last week, and they still think of me as the EDM guy. And I'm like, that was one album, you guys. It was one album. So like we released that. It was tremendously successful for what it was. Most kids don't know who I am, but they know the song. And if they hear the song, like you can Google the title In This World, and it'll populate a list of 100 different versions that people have like made of it just because they saw it on the Dude Perfect show. And it's so funny. So that was a shadow that was really, really hard to overcome. So like the next 3 album cycles. So another album with Surrender was kind of a little more pop flavored, and then the Control album series from 2 years ago. That's when I started.
Hang on, we got a little music playing in the background. Oh yeah, you can't hear it, but you can't hear that. It's the Unicron remix of In This World.
That's the one. 10-year-olds love that song.
Okay. I had to play just a little clip of that so people knew what we were talking about.
Well, what's ironic is the guy that remixed that, he's now a mix engineer, and he mixes a lot of radio singles for a lot of big-time Christian artists now. Back then, we were both kind of trying to find our footing and where we fit in this whole thing, and now we're both doing what we're called to do. So it's just crazy how that all happened. So.
All right, well, talk about some of the. We got the album Louder Than Lies. Talk about some of the messages. What are you trying to communicate lyrically through the music these days?
Yeah, kind of the same thing I've been trying to communicate for really the past 10 years. I kind of got away from it, as we just talked about, in the whole EDM thing. Just want to do something different. And so I struggled with the truth about who God says I am, and being the knucklehead I am, being a human. Sometimes I stray, and then God has to, bring me back in. A lot of what I've dealt with is my identity in Christ and who he says I am versus what I think I should be doing. And not just in the negative sense and like that I'm beating myself up all the time. Sometimes it's more of a prideful thing that I should be doing this and I should be doing that. And like, I've been working at this for so long that like it should look this way, and it's not. And then that sin of pride, creeps up, or it gets back to that whole thing where it's like, I'm not good enough to really be doing this. I hope that the songs can relate to people in that whatever they're trying to step into, whatever they're calling in life, whatever God is leading them to, that they're not listening to the lies of the enemy, to the lies of Satan, telling them that they should stay where they're at in the dark. Kind of like what I said earlier, that when you step out into the light, and that's why there's a light bulb on the album cover. Actually, there's intentionality behind that. So when the light comes on, suddenly the truth is out there. You can see it for what it is, and when you know the truth, and you know the truth of who God says you are and what you were made to do, if you lean into that, there's really no stopping it. So that's the message of the album.
Yeah, cool. Here's the website, joelvaughnmusic.com. You can check it out. You can actually hear some good music there. You scroll down here, you can read about him, see his albums, see some light bulbs. And I noticed you got tour dates on there. And there's
some that aren't even on there yet.
Oh, okay. So what's going on there?
I am going out on tour with an artist named Jamie Kimmett and another band called After Grace for a Christmas tour. It's a safe, socially distanced tour, whatever that looks like.
Right.
9 dates. Well, I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like a lot of people spread out in a really big room with masks on. But 9 dates that are just kind of spread out across the eastern half of the United States. There aren't any dates in Texas, sadly. But hopefully when things get better, I'll start doing some more tour dates in Texas. A lot of the events I have on the calendar now are private events that are hosted by Churches for Disciple Nows. But tour dates, they're, they could be here one day,
Yeah.
could be gone the next, just depending on how things are going. So
All
just
right.
keep checking the website.
Yeah, so joelvaughnmusic.com, check that out, and you can always pick up the album and listen to that anytime you want, anywhere you listen to music. Joel, appreciate you sharing. Is there anything else that you want to talk about, you want to promote, rather that we may have missed?
Just that the album is on pre-order right now, Louder Than the Lies,
Okay.
on iTunes. So like the first 4 tracks are out right now, and a music video that goes with it. The rest of it actually releases January 29th. But a little birdie told me that since the CDs came in, pretty soon you'll be able to order the CDs online before you can buy it digitally. Because let's face it, this is 2020. We need something good to happen.
Yeah, right, okay. No joke. There it is. Check it out, Louder Than the Lies. Joel, again, I appreciate you being here, and I'm going to leave people today, and you can hang up if you'd like to, because I'm going to play a little bit of music from a live session you did. And they can really hear what you sound like and see you play, because you're a fabulous player. This is Joel Vaughn. This is the song Already Done.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man.
So lay your fears
See you later.
down and lift your head high, 'cause impossible things are where his faithfulness can shine. He'll always lead you. So when he says, he promises, you know he's coming through. You can run right at your mountain like it's already moved. And you can chase down your Goliath like you know he's gonna lose. Maybe your waters haven't parted yet, but the time is gonna come. 'Cause when our Father makes a promise, it's already done.